had neuroblastoma stage 4, also high risk. She went through the regular protocol at Akron Children's. She did the 6 rounds of chemo, perfectly fine. They said she was actually, she never had to go in for blood transfusions until after like the 6th round, which was, they said was a miracle because that never happens. She was, so she did good there. She had her tumor taken out. Well, first she was diagnosed because she had really bad leg pain. She was going from my bed to her bed crying, saying her legs hurt. We ended up taking her to the doctors and they said, oh, it's just growing pains. And we're like, okay at first, but then I talked to a friend of mine who's a nurse and she said she's 2 years old. That's not, that kind of the pain isn't growing pains, because she was crying holding her leg. But it was only at night, and if you do look up growing pains, it says at night they get more restless and tired, so what we kind of was hoping it was. But so we brought her back in, they did x-rays of her legs, didn't see nothing, was like, she's fine, just growing pains. So then next couple of days she was like really pale, she was white, she really didn't lose any weight. That was her only symptom, was the pain. She did end up spiking a fever and had a runny nose, but I figured it was just cold. So we brought her back in. Well, my mom did actually. I was at work. My mom brought her back in. I got her blood work done. I said, demand something, blood work, so we can at least know if everything is good. So they did the blood work, and they called us back later at night and said, bring her to the oncology floor at Akron Children's, the hemoc oncology floor. And, you know, of course, we freaked out. We brought her there, and they scanned her belly, and that's when they found the tumor. And they said, well, at first they thought it was some sort of blood disorder because her platelets were low. Her platelets and her everything was just dangerously low. So they first thought it was a blood disorder, but then they ended up doing the scan, finding the tumor, and said they're pretty sure it's neuroblastoma, but they want to get a biopsy to make sure. So they did the biopsy, and unfortunately it was. If any of you don't know, neuroblastoma is very hard to catch early because it spreads really rapidly. If you catch it early, it's very shocking, but so we didn't catch it in time. She went through 6 rounds of chemo. She got her tumor removed. Tumor removal was only like 3 hours. It normally takes like 6 to 12 hours, so she was lucky there. They got all of it. Then she did the 6 rounds of chemo, had scans done, and she only had a little bit of cancer left. It was barely in her tumor site. I guess there was a little bit they must have missed or something, but it was barely nothing. So then she ended up doing, we took a break. She did transplant, which with neuroblastoma kids, you get your own stem cells back. They take them from you and they cycle through a machine, and then eventually whenever they start the chemo, you get like hit with really high grade chemo, and then you get your stem cells back in you. So it's always a perfect match usually. So she ended up having complications from that. She got something called TMA. She ended up getting that, and she had to she also got something called C. diff that caused her bowels to die. But in normal those cases, they can catch it early enough to treat it. But it just spread too quick and it killed her bowels. So she had to get a lot of her bowels and half her colon removed. And so she needed a colostomy bag. So she was a 2-year-old with a colostomy bag. And she still wanted to stand up, wanted to walk around. She called it her baggie. She didn't care. It saved her life. She was a happy 2-year-old. Then she ended up doing, but because she got the TMA, they didn't want her to continue with the second transplant because TMA can flare up with everything. But she had to take a break from treatment because they had to let that go down. And then eventually, which took forever because she kept having different side effects, her blood pressure kept spiking, random stuff kept happening, and all I kept hearing was, oh, your daughter's just a medical mystery. I didn't get no actual answers as to why her blood pressure kept spiking. She kept holding in fluid. We went to the PICU all the time. We were always there and then back, there and back. And by the time she was in transplant, we ended up being, till I brought her home, we were in the hospital for 7 months straight. She didn't get to come out. Then she did, so we finally got everything kind of under control, but her breathing started going bad. Like her oxygen was fine, but she was breathing heavy. So they weren't comfortable doing the radiation at Akron Children's, so we went to Cleveland Clinic and got the radiation done. She did great. She loved it there. She got to go in the playroom and play. And then we ended up leaving there, but her TMH spiked because of radiation, so we had to deal with that. So we had to take a break from treatment again. And then she ended up so we took a break from that for a while, and she was just getting worse and worse, and no one knew why. She was getting puffy again. She was not wanting to sit up, not wanting to do anything. And she was a very active little girl, climbed everywhere, but she just didn't want to do anything. They're doing scans. They decided to do scans early to see if maybe her cancer had returned or something, and they did scan, and they couldn't. So with blood pressure meds, it can mess with the MIBC scan, and it can cause like fluid to look like there's cancer, but they don't really know if it was or wasn't. So it just looked like if you have pneumonia, you got that foggy stuff in your lungs. That's kind of how it looked like all around her body, and it was all glowing. But they thought it was just because of her blood pressure meds, because she was on like 8 blood pressure meds, because they couldn't keep it down. So they said they're pretty sure she's still cancer free, but they can't be, obviously they don't know. And then she ended up getting so after she went through all that, randomly she started getting better. They weren't giving her anything different. They were just treating the TMA, but TMA numbers were the same. Nothing changed, but she got better. She started walking again. She started wanting to play. She got up, and our oncologist at that point was like, you know what, she hasn't been outside in 6 months. They're like, let's take her outside. It's nice out. Take her out. And at that time, actually, COVID hit, but our oncologist seen Alayna's face, and she was depressed. She was on depression meds at 3 years old. But she couldn't, so she was happy for a couple days. She was doing really good. They decided to move forward for her treatment. And they did immunotherapy for a week straight. And then she got tired again, which immunotherapy picks your butt. And then her liver enzyme went up, and they decided to do an ultrasound, and they seen that she had nodules. So they took a biopsy, found out that her cancer returned. And at that point, Alayna started turning kind of yellow. So we knew she wouldn't make it through any more treatment. And they told us the only thing they could do was put her on low-dose chemo, but they don't think it would really help. And once you relapse from neuroblastoma, it's very hard to beat after that. It's kind of just a wait and hope they beat it, but it's really hard. Your chances of survival go down a lot. And she hasn't been home in 7 months. So we brought her home in hospice. We had a parade for her. And she got to see her sissy. We got her a puppy because she would watch that show Pets, and she loved it. So we promised her a puppy. We were able to get her one. She was with us for about a week afterwards, and then she passed away. But we miss her so much, and we haven't had to do anything. When she passed away, it was COVID. So we haven't been able to really celebrate anything about her. It's been like little things, like I do good deeds in her name, and we made a memorial pond in her name, but that's really all I was able to do. So I'm kind of looking forward to us being able to light off the lanterns and we be able to put her name on it, because I haven't been able to do much for her, and it's kind of makes me feel like I've let her